Hey, welcome back to the Unbelievable Podcast. I am BJ Reidell, back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald, and today we're talking about another Minnesota Vikings victory, and we are back. The Vikings are back. They just defeated, as of about 10 minutes ago, per this recording. The Vikings just got their fourth win of the season by a score of 19-13 over the Chicago Bears. It wasn't the prettiest game in the world by any stretch of the imagination. And the Vikings, honestly, they did a lot of things that could have lost them this ball game, but ultimately, they came out ahead. And it. We said it was a race to 20. The Vikings didn't quite get there because of one of several special teams mishaps, but they were the closer team, closer to the pin, right? So the Vikings moved back into position to compete for a playoff spot. Um, so let's talk about it. Let's talk about this game. It's exciting. First of all, just to get out of the way so we don't have to bring it up a million times in the show, Kirk Cousins has won his first Monday Night Football game. Congratulations to Kirk Cousins.
He was fired up about that too. I don't know if that short little clip when they had Kirk Cousins on camera there. I think after a key first down towards the end there, he was fired up. I think this actually did mean it to him as much as he's gonna talk it to the media afterwards probably and say, oh, that's not what it's about. It's about the team win. That meant a lot to him. The 0-9 Monday Night Football record. He wanted to win that one. You could tell right there.
So not only did he break, kind of that, that weird blemish, I suppose, that he has on his quarterback resume. It's still not a great record, but regardless,
Yeah.
not only did he do that, but Kirk Cousins is largely the reason the Vikings won this football game, right? You can make a strong candidate that he was the MVP of this game, and he's, without his performance, the Vikings aren't in position to, get the win at the, going down the stretch there in the fourth quarter. Now, Cousins finishes 25 of 36, 292 yards, 2 touchdowns, and interception. The interception, I think we can kind of write off. That one's more on Adam Thielen. The rare Adam Thielen play that could potentially be a backbreaker. We've seen this a couple times in his career where something, whether it's a fumble, a drop, whatever it is. I thought that was going to be it. I thought that was going to be the moment where the Vikings screwed it up.
Well, if it wasn't that, it was the Patterson return for a touchdown that I was like, okay, well, that's the momentum change Chicago needed. It's over now. But I think Kirk was. It was. I think Nick Olson, our friend, tweeted something like, "This is one of those rare games where it seems like Kirk is the one that's just dealing, and his receivers aren't helping him out. And usually it's kind of maybe the other way around, where the receivers maybe helping Kirk out more.
Sure.
And I mean, Kirk. It's not like Kirk was. He didn't have. There wasn't too many just absolute dime balls or insane passes, that type of throws that no other quarterback would make, type of thing. You could make the argument actually that the touchdown throw to Thielen, the first one, was one of those throws. But other than that, like, it wasn't necessarily about him making otherworldly throws or otherworldly plays. It was just he kept it mistake free. He went through progressions pretty well. Like, he checked down when it was appropriate. He took the shots downfield when it was appropriate. So, I mean, he managed the game. I mean, the game manager, I guess, tag has a negative connotation to it, but that is what being a quarterback is. You are managing the game on the offensive side of the ball, and he did that extremely well in this game against a really, really good Bears defense. So, really good props to him for kind of overcoming that hump, because Chicago has dominated Kirk Cousins the last couple of years. So he got over that hump today with, that was big to see for sure.
Absolutely. Not only does this put the Vikings back into a position where they can contend for a playoff spot, and we'll get to that later, I'm sure. But this is a big momentum swing. That's 3 consecutive division wins. They're now 3-1 in the NFC North, with that only loss being, what should have probably been a preseason game against Green Bay. Now, you could probably start to build some confidence at this point, I think. And here's why. Because the Vikings didn't win behind Dalvin Cook tonight against the Chicago Bears. Dalvin Cook was a factor. He wasn't completely, irrelevant. He finished the game with 96 yards. I know that might seem a little bit strange because it certainly doesn't seem like he got there. But he carried the ball 30 times. And that means, that equates to roughly a 3.2 carry average, I believe is what it is. Generally speaking, we don't expect to win games when Dalvin Cook plays that way. The Vikings over the last couple of weeks have shown that that they want to win games by using Dalvin Cook and, if possible, Dalvin Cook exclusively. Now, tonight, they had to flip the script, and they basically had to flip it early because Dalvin was not going anywhere. Like, he was giving you the 3 yards every play. That's it, which isn't going to win ball games for this Vikings team unless they start to throw the ball. And that's exactly what they did. And whether it was Jefferson making plays all over the field again or Adam Thielen coming away with 2 humongous touchdowns, one being an absolutely sensational catch, the Vikings were able to do something through the air for the first time in what feels like forever, honestly.
Yeah, it was weird because after a little bit of this game, you realized that Dalvin just wasn't going to cook, if pun intended, right? Like that he wasn't getting the ground game going, and especially you could tell right away too. Akeem Hicks was a big part of that, and then when he left the game, things kind of opened up a little bit for Dalvin, and I don't think that was a coincidence. But one note here: Kirk Cousins on third down tonight, 10 for 11, 149 yards, 2 touchdowns, dealing on third down. And a lot of that was to Justin Jefferson as well. And so it almost felt like, in a way, the reliance on Dalvin the last couple of weeks, and it worked so much, kind of, it seemed like Kubiak calling plays, they were a little bit stubborn and too reliant on Cook for too long in this game, because it seemed like the way Cousins was dealing, you kind of had to let him rip a little bit, and this game could have broken open a lot more than, it was too close probably than it should have been. But, Kirk, phenomenal game. This is one of those. I don't want to say it's a career night for Kirk because this game could be. It's very likely that this game is completely meaningless, in a couple months. But this is one of those signature games in his career at this point, which doesn't say a whole lot about his career, but it is because it's a big Monday night game, divisional game on the road, Monday Night Football, trying to keep your team alive. The horrible track record against both Chicago and on Monday night, and he kind of carried the team to this win. Now, granted, we'll talk about the other side of the ball here, but of course, also helping in the cause was Chicago's horrendous offense. That I can't even fathom how they won 5 games in this actual 2020 season.
Yeah, I mean, I picked Chicago just like knowing that this offense was bad, right?
Yeah,
I didn't realize that it was this bad, right? So give credit where credit is due for Kirk Cousins. He's played sensational. He overcame some demons tonight, and he was the catalyst in this Vikings victory. This was not a Dalvin Cook game, and that's important here because this receiving chart is in itself just shows how much of an effort that Kirk Cousins put out there. You get 8 receptions from Justin Jefferson, 4 from Rudolph, 4 from Thielen, 2 from Beebe, 4 from Dalvin Cook, 2 from Conklin. He was spreading it around everywhere. He was the guy. But now, if you're only going to get 19 points, though, that's my one issue with this Kirk Cousins performance is that you ultimately only got 19. Then you got to cut a piece of the cake for the defense here because ultimately, when the game was on the line, they were the group that really was able to come through. There were multiple occasions where Chicago was either threatening to be in a position to come back in this game or straight up in position to win this game. And the Vikings defense was able to hold tough. And that's not something that we got used to seeing the first month of the season. But really, this has kind of been a theme now for the past 3 weeks. His defense is playing a lot better.
Hercules Mataafa is something fired him up when he was cut and then back on the practice squad. Something happened where he really got fired up, and he has taken it to opposing offensive linemen now. He's lining up all over the line as well. He's been outside. He's been at the A gap. He's been all over. He's causing some havoc, and it's kind of nuts what Zimmer is doing with his defense right now because I don't know how many times the Monday Night Crew on ESPN was gonna say that the Vikings are down their top 4 corners. It seemed like every other possession they mentioned that, and whether Jeff Gladney falls into that category or not is kind of up to you. But basically, it's clear the Vikings are down a lot. There's no Danielle Hunter, obviously, no Bernard Pierce, and no Anthony Barr, and then there's actually an Eric Kendrick scare for a little bit there in the game. But then, of course, all the cornerback injuries. And this defense has been great the last 3 weeks after the bye week. So credit to Mike Zimmer. We kind of, I myself included, started to doubt Zimmer
We'd asked
going
that
into
question.
the bye week.
That was a very real question about.
Yeah, I mean, should he lose his job? And maybe that's part of this. Maybe the front office and ownership went to Zimmer and said, all right, hey, you got to do this and this and this to keep your job, and he's delivering. So. A really depleted defensive unit still. We're kind of forgetting almost how depleted this unit is right now because of the way that they've held, Green Bay in check, Detroit in check, and now Chicago just dominated them, holding them to less than 200 yards. Granted, it was the Chicago Bears, but point is, his defense is it's not all the way back. It's not 2017, but it's it's competitive, and certainly that's different than the narrative the first 3 to 5 weeks of the year, where this defense didn't even seem like a JV team. So credit to the Vikings. This team's they're back in the playoff fold now, and there's hope. There's hope for the playoffs, which is I can't even believe we're at this point, given where this thing was at the bye week.
I've got an important question. Why is this Vikings defensive line better without Yannick Ngakoue?
I wish I could answer that. I wish I could.
And I think the only fair answer is DJ Wanham, right? Because that's the bait and switch there,
He's
right?
just, I mean, I guess he has
looked
been
really nice.
He has been really good.
Looked really nice.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe you know what? I guess the Vikings coaching staff didn't know what they had in DJ Wanham until he kind of got that chance, and that's how things have unfolded now. I don't know, but he certainly looks like he could be a nice little gem, another mid-round gem for Rick Spielman to put on the resume. That looks like a good pick right now.
He doesn't even need to be, in theory, down the line here, he doesn't necessarily need to be a star either, right? Like his future in Minnesota, this is what he's doing right now. That's good enough to be a nice rotational piece. You'll take that. Because when you get to Neil Hunt, in theory, he goes back into that role unless he's able to outplay Odenigbo, who also had a pretty nice night, getting pressure off the edge, something that we were concerned about early in the season, and it kind of lended support to the idea that the Vikings needed to go out and get a guy like Ngakoue. But ever since he's been gone, I mean, the pocket has collapsed that much quicker. I don't necessarily know if the numbers reflect this, but it certainly looks like that on paper.
And it's one thing if it was just happening to Nick Foles and the Bears, but like it had been happening to Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford previous 2 games. Like this isn't a one-off fluke here for the Vikings defense against a bad offense. Like I don't want to say shut down the Packers, but they definitely held them in check relative to how they performed against other defenses so far this year. And then Detroit, same thing. So there's a lot of reason for hope that things are trending in the right direction defensively for sure. And I think that's the main reason why there's so much optimism now around the Vikings, where 3 weeks ago there was absolutely none of that. So Wanham is a big piece of that for sure. He's been a stud.
Absolutely.
And Armon Watts too. Armon Watts has been really good the last couple of weeks against the run in particular.
There's a lot of new names here that we might be getting to know a little bit better because, I mean, in theory, right, when the Vikings were 1-5, the most important thing for a lot of these players in this roster were competing for a roster spot next year, right? Now these guys have won 3 games together. This young group, this kind of weird forced together group that includes guys like Watts, Chris Boyd, who has played with his hair on fire the last couple of weeks. He's been worlds better than what we saw from him early on. Troy Dye was in on the action this week. He had a really important pressure in this game. There's just a lot of new faces, and of course you kind of expect it, but you are now seeing real development from Jeff Gladney. He blew up a couple of very important screens, and he's been arguably the best cornerback. But I do say Chris Boyd has played very, very well. You have to give him a lot of credit for the way that he played the last couple of weeks. Kind of playing in Gladney's shadow, because I think a lot of us as Vikings fans are watching the first round pick more so than the undrafted guy that played like hell the last month or so. But I think you do have to give some credit to Boyd, who was very nice in coverage today. I mean, ultimately, the combination between Gladney and Boyd was able to hold, receivers in the entire NFL. Allen Robinson, who we spoke at length about on the preview show, to just 6 catches at 43 yards. That's certainly not what we were expecting, and I think that there's a fair case to make that Nick Foles is part of that problem, obviously. But still, I mean, you have to be very happy with what you're seeing from both the guys up front and the guys in the back end. I mean, I think as a fan base, we're pretty comfortable with Eric Kendricks and Eric Wilson in the middle right now. It's not necessarily ideal, but with the way that Wilson has played for about 5 weeks in a row now, and knowing
He's a
what
stud.
character player, absolutely right. You feel good about that middle level. It's been the question mark has been on the back end with the injuries and the young players, and then of course this pass rush. And you're getting all three units, kind of merging together to put this team in a very competitive position every week. And that's certainly nice to see, if nothing else, from a fan's perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the coverage breakdowns, seem are quickly decreasing by the week. And it seems like now it's just schematically too, things are way better. It seems like everything's kind of coming together the right way. Eric Wilson is unbelievable right now, and I mean, in a way, this is kind of the cloudy way of looking at this, but it's making the Anthony Barr contract look pretty bad. Because Wilson it doesn't seem like they're missing much with Barr out, but the cornerback play it's much better, and there's certainly less concerns about that. And I just give it up to Zimmer. I mean, he came into this game and knowing there's a lot of weaknesses from this Bears offense, and he really exploited them, and he did kind of make you shut down Allen Robinson, keep the top on him, and try to make someone else beat you, and nobody else really did, besides the special teams, which is probably the one glaring problem with this game, is the Viking special teams still is an issue. And I think it's funny because one thing we talked about in the Lions post-game show, I believe, was how you can't have two blocked punts and the special teams be this bad and win next week at Chicago, and it was probably arguably worse special teams, and the Vikings still were able to get a W. But yeah, they're still able to get a W.
We need to have this conversation now, right? We glossed over it last week, right? We were like, you know what? Couple mistakes didn't cost them a win, whatever. It's a trend now. It's a problem now. We got to talk about this, right? I don't know what's going on with the Vikings special teams the last 2 weeks, but it's literally there's a problem at every single unit.
How safe is Malouf's job? What do you think?
I mean, if you're gonna fire someone right now, that's your guy.
It's tough to fire anybody after 3 straight wins, but
I agree.
Minnesota
but
special teams it's ugly right now, all across the board.
There's at least one major problem on basically every single individual special team, right? I mean, Austin Cutting right now is hurting every unit that he's snapping on. Every unit. It's dangerous. I think everyone on that
there was a real fear for a long time that the Vikings were going to lose this game 20-19 because of that missed extra point, or I guess it wasn't missed, it was just straight up, a bad snap that caused a kind of a.
It's not just the bad snap though that put them in a position where the Bears could go down and win the game with a touchdown and an extra point. It's also the fact that when the Vikings went to punt the next time out, I mean, you can't tell me that every guy on that team wasn't shitting their pants. Think about being in that position. You have to snap the football.
Because it wasn't just that one singular snap in the fifth.
No, it wasn't.
It was last week and the week before. It's been shaky for a few weeks now. And, there's.
You got to bring someone in, I think.
I think one of my buddies said, because it's military appreciation month in the NFL, but so you don't want to cut Austin Cutting right now. But, it might be time to have that discussion with him, because it's been rough. And maybe, and I'm not a long snapping expert. I have no idea. Maybe there's other things going on that I'm not aware of, but
I'm enough of an expert to know that you can't snap the ball. You can't pop.
You can't roll a ground ball to your holder, right?
That's not going to work. But, so
here's the question for you. This is not a cutting thing, but this is just why kick the ball to Cordero Patterson? That is clearly the biggest threat they have to score at this point is Cordero Patterson kick return. There's no reason to kick to him.
Also,
I don't get it.
If any team in the world knows not to kick to Patterson, shouldn't it be our Vikings? What? It was so many the Vikings did a couple things here where it felt like they're trying to lose the game. You think about the drop Thielen play, letting Cordero Patterson open up the half. I mean, a couple of positions that the Vikings were in. I mean, it really felt like they were going to have another meltdown, and ultimately they didn't. But, you're not going to keep winning football games with the special teams playing the way it is. Cut and dry.
Yeah. It's
It's
not sustainable. You can't because I mean, entering the week, I don't know if it changed after this game or not, but I know entering the week the Vikings were worst in the league in both offensive starting field position and then defensive starting field position. So I think their average starting field position offensively was like their own 20 something or 22, I think, and then defensively it was like the 35. Uh, and that a lot of that has to do with special teams, whether it's your punter pinning the opposing offense deep field position, or it's your return units giving up a bunch of yards on the returns, like that type of thing. It's not just about the kicking or the snapping or stopping the return. It's all across the board. The special teams unit has been bad, and that's I mean, these are the plays that they don't get a lot of attention, but in a normal circumstance, that's a huge red flag, and you can't win 3 games in a row with special teams that bad. But this has been a weird stretch of games.
shockingly Dan Bailey, the kicker, the only one that seems unaffected by the Vikings' special
Yeah.
team issues. But it's got to be coming. Like you saw on that extra point, and this is really what concerns me with cutting moving forward, is you saw on the extra point, right, where Dan Bailey had to hold when the ball skipped. He
Yeah.
had to
Oh, he had to
hold
stop.
there, and
Yeah.
now that's in his mind forever.
Yep.
Forever. That makes me very nervous
A
moving
little
forward.
bit of confidence kind of taken away there and I mean, I'm sure that's a big deal for kickers, right? Getting into a rhythm, trusting
know it.
your
Have to know that.
specialists. Yeah. There's got to be
It's
some trust there that when you take it away, yeah, it's you hope I mean, it's classic Vikings, right? For that to be a huge concern moving forward as special teams, where seemingly everything is going right on the other two sides of the ball, offense, defense. But I don't know. Other than that, I mean, I love the way that, offense moved the ball. We're able to without a Dalvin Cook huge game. And it's not like we're concerned about Dalvin Cook in the running game moving forward. I think it's just the Bears are that good stopping the run. But the way the offense moved the ball through the air, Kirk was very efficient defensively. No issues at all with a Bears offense that lacks anything. I mean, that was just 2 field goals, which one of them came off of the interception based on field position. So a lot of positives to take away. It's just the really glaring negative is special teams.
absolutely. So I mean, across the board here, the Vikings, ultimately, like we can look on the bright side. We can be excited about this. Uh, you know, the special teams hasn't came to bite the Vikings yet, and if they get it fixed in time, maybe it never will, right? So there's reason to be concerned here, but looking in the present now, right? What this win does for the Vikings. Now, if you were in the field of Vikings need to tank, um, you're probably not too happy right now because the Vikings have gotten them back into the position where they have essentially screwed themselves out of a top 5 pick. It's not going to really happen anymore. If they want to get a quarterback in one of those top 2 quarterbacks next year's draft, they're going to have to trade up. That's the situation they're in now. Now, if you're in the field where you just want to watch competitive football, and if the Vikings make it to the playoffs and don't win the Super Bowl, you're cool with that. Probably like the majority of us who are we can't stop watching the Vikings no matter how bad they are and can't, root for them to lose no matter how much we know that a top 5 pick would help this team. There's legitimate reason to be excited now. Act 1, 2, and 3, all complete across the board. That's 3 divisional wins. That's, it's going to be very, very difficult for the Vikings to miss the playoffs if they're able to accomplish a 4-2, 5-1 record within the NFC North. It's going to be very difficult to do that. So for that reason alone, you have to be excited. Now, if you look at the standings, you might be thinking, oh, the Vikings aren't really back yet. This is premature. No, it's not, though. I understand that they're 2 games back of Seattle, who theoretically is the number 7 seed right now, but they have put themselves into a position to compete regardless. Their playoff percentage skyrocketed tonight by getting another division win. The fact that they're not back to 500 is, whatever, but they're back right now. They're right in the thick of it right now. If ESPN puts up their favorite graphic, teams that are in the hunt, the Vikings will be listed probably second behind just the Bears. So they have claimed an advantage over, and by the way, get to play at home later on this year. So the Vikings are definitely in position to compete for a playoff spot now. There's, whether you think that this team can be truly competitive, I think they've shown over the last, not just 3 weeks, but last 5 weeks, that they can compete with literally anybody, and that should that should give you hope that this isn't just a a team that is going to get to 9-7, lose in the first round, take the number 18 overall pick, and not draft something that can help the Vikings in the immediate future. Yeah, I mean I understand that perception, but in the now, you look at the schedule coming up, you look at what's behind you, what you were able to accomplish over this last month or so, and you have to be pretty fired up as a Vikings fan, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's 3 straight wins against the division, and then, of course, looking at the schedule ahead here, 3 home games against, we'll say struggling teams. The Dallas struggling, Carolina struggling, Jacksonville really struggling. So there's a lot of optimism there where, this win streak couldn't continue. Now, I just took a quick peek at the Packers' schedule, and outside of really Indianapolis this week, their schedule is pretty easy too moving forward. They have Indianapolis and Tennessee, and those are really their toughest games remaining. But it's going to take Arizona, Seattle, probably New Orleans or Tampa Bay, a couple of those teams kind of falling off a little bit for the Vikings to move up. And, we're going to look back at that DeAndre Hopkins catch against Buffalo potentially at the end of the season and think, well, that might have snipped the Vikings out of the playoffs if things kind of trend this similar way. But we'll worry about that for another day. Right now, Vikings 3 straight wins, all against the NFC North, 4-5 record after a 1-5 start. They get 3 straight home games now against very beatable opponents. There's a lot to feel good about.
Jameis Winston is now the quarterback in New Orleans, by the way.
That's a good point. Which, hey, that's a future Vikings opponent, by the way. Week 16. Now, I don't know if you saw the Drew Brees injury, but he has like 5 fractured ribs and a punctured lung. I don't know about you, but that could be a 6-week injury.
They say it's 3 weeks. I was laughing when they said it was 3 weeks.
I mean, good luck, Drew. But that's another potential. We could get Jameis Winston versus Kirk Cousins week 16 potentially, when that could be a key matchup in the playoff race down the road. But that is way in the future, and it's probably still aspirational to think of that as a playoff tilter 6 weeks down the road when a lot has to happen before then.
I think the best part here is that the Vikings get to go into Thanksgiving and potentially December as a team that can compete for a playoff spot. And really, when you start 1-5, that's all you can ask for, right? You win 3 weeks in a row against quality opponents. Say what you want about Detroit, but they are also 4-5. They're coming off of a big win. So, I will admit that it's still a little bit difficult to be like, flamboyantly excited about this team, just because you can see some glaring issues, right? And so you can see very visibly see things that are concerning, but at the same time, to me, the highlight thing here is that Kirk Cousins did this game mostly without Dalvin Cook. This is probably about as inefficient as Dalvin Cook is going to be this season, in my opinion. I don't think that
the most inefficient he's been the last 3 weeks. You could probably go back even further he didn't play Atlanta game. Seattle game, he was pretty solid. You got to go back long time before there was a game where Dalvin was this inefficient running the ball. And Kirk picked up the slack. Offense moved the ball well. They converted a bunch of third downs because of him. It's weird because, you don't want to say Kirk carried the Vikings to a win when they scored 19 points, but you can say with the Thielen interception, there was probably 3 to 7 points to that extra they could have had. There's a lot of reason to believe Kirk played a heck of a game, perhaps the best one he's played this season.
It's definitely the most important game, right? We talked about this coming into this week, right? If the Vikings lose this football game, they're dead, and they won 2 games in a row for no reason. Instead, now they've won 3 in a row, and there's reason now, and that's I think that in itself is something to celebrate. I really do think the Vikings are back at this point. There's, you head into Thanksgiving, right, and you can still talk about Vikings football instead of politics with your family, assuming you are celebrating Thanksgiving with your family, right? So I feel like that's a win in itself. So you look at.
By the way, Vikings open as 7.5-point favorites against Dallas. So
really,
Yeah, 7.5 point favorites at home, and it sounds like Andy Dalton could be back, but we'll talk about that on the show this week. So
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, that seems like a good point there. Um, Thank you for listening to this late night recording where Drew and I are both seemingly half asleep here. Uh, but there's, like I said before, this is another big reason to be excited about this team, and the way that they're kind of moving forward in a direction where I can see 7-5 now. If you told me that 3 weeks ago that the Vikings had even the potential to be 7-5, um, I would have told you you're crazy, and I would have told you that there's a better chance that you know the Vikings don't win another game, then they could potentially be winning 3 games in a row against division opponents. So this is the big game, big win, big game. No matter how poorly Chicago's offense played or how inept the Viking special teams was. Ultimately, we've talked a lot about this season, how important just the record is, not necessarily winning in a exciting or, you know, clean way, just winning. The Vikings needed a couple of these games, right? They just needed a couple of games to just win. It didn't need to be perfect, but just win the game, put it on your record, and they did that tonight. So, um, Drew and I will be back next week to talk, or excuse me, later on this week to take a look at this upcoming game here with the Dallas Cowboys, as he mentioned. Vikings with a very real opportunity to get back to 500 and continue to try to crawl back into playoff contention after starting 1-5. But for tonight, this is something to be excited about, and definitely gives you reason to believe this team will be competing for something in December. So thank you as always for listening to us. You can find show on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, wherever else you listen to your podcast. Make sure to check us out on Daily Norseman. You can leave a comment in the comment section there. Let us know where you're at. Do you think the Vikings are all the ways back now, or do you still need to see a little bit more before you're willing to believe this team has a chance to compete? Let us know. You can also watch us on YouTube. Both Drew and I have basically black backgrounds today, though, given that it's about 11 o'clock Central Time. It's recording. But I'll leave it at that, and we'll catch you guys later on this week to discuss the Dallas Cowboys. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you then.